It would help if I unmuted myself. Hello, everyone. How are you? Happy Thanksgiving. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Turkey Day. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, let me know what you do celebrate in the comments because I would love to be able to, um, sorry, I was switching to um, chat on my phone because I like to also monitor my sound. Um, and I do try to monitor what I'm doing on when I'm on the lives. Um, just so I kind of know what I'm doing. I know it doesn't always work and I still make mistakes sometimes, but um how is everybody's turkey day? Are you guys like full of turkey? I am having my turkey day tomorrow. My ex has the kids today, which is why I'm only going to be on until like 6 or 6:30 because I have to then drive like roughly 25 minutes to go get them. But I am enjoying my break. I have done some cleaning. I have gotten a bath. I've taken my husband to work. Um, so yes. Um, who is excited to jump back into day 4 of Melody Walker Farris? Because I know I am excited for it. I am excited to have something other than my usual um, to kind of get my mind off of life. Um, Give me 1 second because we should be on day 4 and it still has me on day 3. Oh no, we lost our place on day 4. Shit. All right, give me 1 second, guys, so I can kind of try to get a quick idea of where we left off last time with Melody Farris. Excuse me, Loki. I apologize. Let me shut off my desktop audio. Let's see. All right, so we were close to the end of day 3. I remember now. We were on day 3, and I wanted you guys to see some drama that was happening. That's why we're still on day 3 and not on day 4. That makes sense. All right, let me go back to where we were. I'm such a slacker. Okay, perfect. It's been like 3 weeks since we have been on Melody Walker Ferris. Um, so the drama that I am referring to is extraordinarily entertaining if this is the drama that I'm thinking that it is. Honestly, I feel like this situation should not have been happening with one of the jurors, but that's just me. Um, but I don't want to spoil it because it really is a funny scenario. So we're gonna watch this scenario kind of play itself out with one of the jurors. And then, if I remember correctly, it does roll over into the morning of day 4. Um, which again, the whole thing's just kind of comical. Um, so that's what we're gonna start our day out with. If you guys are traveling, please be cautious. If you guys are traveling in one of the states that has, um, you know, severe weather warnings, please be extra careful. Um, and if you are using me to hide away from family for a little bit because you're overwhelmed, um, feel free, take a little break with me. Um, and let's dive into this together.
And we're not going to address the juror by name, just by number. All right, anything else? And we'll just do that whenever we wrap up for the day. Let's, still shoot for 5 o'clock. I don't think we'll be done with him by 5 o'clock regardless. So if we get to a logical point, we can stop. And I just told the bailiff to...
Okay, so just real quick, we have to finish up some Chris testimony before we get to the end of the trial. I was ahead of myself.
I'd rather you go downstairs if you need to do that. Okay. Everybody is a little soft-spoken today. Her cousin says there were 5 tornadoes circling their house. So yeah, no, we we tried to tell them to come. They were going to come, change their mind, didn't come. We told them to come anyway, and they didn't. 2 of them wanted to, 2 of them didn't. And it's going to be bad. They didn't get that. They didn't get that. I think that's why they want to stay. But we tried to get them to come up and stay with us. But she posted at lunch that there were 5 tornadoes all around her. All right, let's get started back.
Okay, Chris. I want to go and stay on the 5th for a little while and talk about a couple of things. We had talked about how you looked for your dad's wallet earlier. Did you ever see that wallet?
Yeah, my mom came walking up with a wallet after I got upstairs saying she had found it in the Mercedes.
And what did you think when she told you she had found his wallet in the Mercedes?
I thought, well, I just looked in the Mercedes and it wasn't in there. And I thought that was kind of weird because when I got there that day, she said she hadn't seen his wallet. I go to look for it, then come back to the kitchen. Now all of a sudden she's got the wallet. It says she found it in the Mercedes.
Did you see her go into the garage? Was the Mercedes in the garage?
Yes.
Did you see her go into the garage?
No.
Okay. Do you know if your mom has a fear of fire at all?
No.
She's never mentioned to you how scared she is when your father burns or anything of that nature?
I think she had mentioned just things like, there was one time he actually caught the basement on fire because he had put a cigarette in the trash can, the basement at the farm. And after that, she said, well, I think he's going to burn the house down eventually. But never fear of actual fire. I don't remember that at all.
Okay. When you were on the property on the 5th looking for your dad,
Okay, is it just me, or do you guys also feel that Chris seems to really be trying to reach for a connection between this fire and his mother with the cigarette thing?
did Melody mention anything about the burn pile or about him burning? Did you ever have a conversation asking her if he did burn the pile on the 4th?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you went outside and sat on your truck. You had testified earlier. And EMS arrived with the backboard. Did you at any point leave the property?
I left the property hours later after the authorities allowed me to leave.
Why did you leave?
To go check on my children. After the whole EMS saying what they said, I called my wife, who was at work, and I said, you need to get here. You need to come up here. You need to come get Addison. And then I was there for a while. She did come get both the girls. Sometime during this whole thing, I think I had texted Emma's mom or called Emma's mom, I don't remember which, and said, I need to get Ella.
That'd be Beth Braswell.
Yes.
Okay. And that's where Ella was.
Yes.
So Jenna came up to the farm,
Correct.
got Addison, and eventually got Ella.
Ella came to the farm, And I think it's just so foggy at that point. I think she brought Ella to the farm, but I don't think she met Beth anywhere to get Ella. I think Ella was brought to the farm because Jenna was in downtown Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So from my phone call, it would have had to take her, even if driving as fast as she could, at least at a minimum of half an hour to get there. So sometime in that time, I just can't remember if I called Beth and said, bring Ella back. I honestly, I just don't remember.
Somehow, Ella and Addison went home with Jenna.
Yes.
Okay. Did Cameron go with them?
Yes.
To Buckhead?
Yes, to my apartment in Buckhead.
So once Jenna left with the kids and you were there with your family, did anyone else show up that wasn't law enforcement? Did Emily show up? Were there friends and family?
Chad Bruce showed up. Emily showed up later that day. I mean, I called Emily to tell her what had happened.
When did you call Emily to tell her what happened?
In that time period of after EMS told me what they told me about, sorry for your loss. And I began, letting people know who needed to know what was going on.
So at that point, did Emily get in the car and drive down?
Yes.
So while law enforcement was at your house, everybody arrived, lights, all of that, did you and Scott talk?
I don't remember.
Did he mention anything about a gun?
Yeah.
When was that?
Right about that time after EMS was the first to arrive. So my brother was out talking about it, and I heard him say something about he saw a gun in the basement, something about, sometime before all this happened, and about he was having to get a remote control or something like that. And
it wasn't to you; it was just someone else.
I don't think Scott and I sat down and had a conversation one-on-one.
Okay.
I think I was just hearing what he was saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you caught that information. Did you
Oh,
think
yeah.
that was weird?
Yeah.
Why did you think that was weird?
Because I just thought it was weird. Like, there's a gun in the basement, and I don't know. I just thought it just didn't make nothing made sense to me at the time, but I just remember that, thinking that, well, that's strange, I don't really remember what made me think that.
At this point, what did you think happened to your father?
I was going through scenarios in my head, how I didn't know what happened. I just knew what I had just seen, what was happening, what was going on, and I'm trying to figure out, running through scenarios in my head, how in the world, I thought, could he have had a medical thing? I thought maybe he fell in the fire. Maybe, that's where my head was at that point.
Did you talk to law enforcement on scene?
I did.
Do you remember who it was that you spoke with?
Well, specifically law enforcement, the only time really anybody asked me about what was going on at the time was when I sat down with, and I apologize, it could be Lieutenant, I don't know police ranks,
That's okay.
and Kaikanal or something like that. He's the one who interviewed me first.
Okay, where was that?
In his police vehicle.
On scene?
On scene.
At the farm?
Correct.
How long did you talk with him? Do you remember?
Oh, honestly, it could have been 15 minutes. It could have been an hour. I don't remember.
At that point, did you think anyone else had been involved in your father's death?
I don't remember specifically. I remember our conversation kind of had me thinking of maybe that was the case, because he said, well, Chris, when things like this happen, we assume foul play until we know it's not. Okay? So when he said that to me, he then asked me, did your parents, not quoting him, paraphrasing, something about how was your parents' marriage? Mm-hmm. How was their relationship? And I told him.
You told him the truth?
Told him the truth.
At that point in time, how much, if anything, did you know about Rusty Barton?
I knew a lot about Rusty Barton at the time.
What was it that you knew about him?
Well, I knew he had come to my sister's wedding.
When
and
was
was
that?
dancing. It was in July of 2016. And at the reception, he was dancing with my mother. And then the next morning, my father, my brother, myself, Jenna, and my father went to Jonathan's Sports Grill in Franklin, Tennessee, Cool Springs, and we had brunch, breakfast, whatever you want to call it. And my dad was very upset about what he had seen at that reception, about my mom dancing with Rusty. And he told me, he's like, this is the last time she's going to embarrass me like that.
Did you learn if your mom had multiple cell phones?
Yes.
How did you learn about that?
My kids told me.
Did you ever see her with multiple cell phones?
No.
So when you were around your mom, you saw that her to just have one phone.
Mm-hmm.
And your daughters mentioned she had a second phone. Is that?
Yeah, and my dad.
And your dad.
Yeah.
In what context did your dad inform you of the cell phone?
I don't remember. I just remember him saying something about it. I don't remember the context of it.
In your family, when conflicts would arise, like the Ted Wiley situation, would you all talk about it together or talk things out? How did issues like that settle in your family?
They were never settled. We didn't talk about those kind of things.
All right. So, as a family with mostly adult children, why would the kids be brought into their parents' relationship problems? I don't blame Melody and Gary. I apologize. I have a piece of hard candy in my mouth. But I don't blame Gary and Melody for not including the children in things like the affairs that are going on and what their finances look like and things like that. You're not supposed to bring your children into this. I don't care if they're adults. Like, they're asking this question, like, because the children are excluded, you know, that means that the Farrises were hiding something, were doing something wrong. No, they were being typical parents. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that the Farrises should have included their children? Do you think it was odd that they didn't?
Just kind of swept it under the rug. I mean, when my dad told me about that she was coming home from, I mean, I know where I was. I know where I was parked having the conversation with him. I'll never forget it. He told me she's coming home and you need to accept her back. And I don't know. I mean,
Did your dad love your mom?
oh, very much so.
You could see that.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that why he stayed with her?
Yes.
So going back to the 5th, you talked to detective at the time, Kuykendall, in his patrol car.
Yep.
After that, did you speak with law enforcement again?
No. I left after that. I wanted to go check on my children. I just wanted to get to my kids.
And did you check with someone
Yeah.
about leaving?
Oh, they had my car blocked in they moved the police car so I could leave.
What did you do when you left?
I went home.
And what did you do when you got home?
I went home and I hugged my kids.
How long were you in Buckhead at home with your kids?
Not very long. I just went home and checked on them, and I wasn't home very long because Emily was coming, and I wanted to be there when Emily got there.
Were you there when Emily got there?
Emily got there before I got there. I pulled up, and Emily was already there.
How many hours had passed? How long does it take Emily to drive from?
Approximately 3 to 4 hours, where they were living at the time. 3 to 4 hours.
So that's about how much time had passed since you called her, and then you coming back to the house.
I guess.
And Emily was there.
Yes.
Was she there with her husband?
Yes.
And did you speak with Emily?
Yes.
Where did you end up going that night since law enforcement stayed at the farm?
I went home. I left. I know it was dark. I think I left around about the same time Emily left. And I actually had gone to get gas, and I went to run my debit card, and it said, "Please see cashier." And I was like, what in the world? Well, something had happened with my account. That check that I had written to that painter, he had taken it and tried to cash it when I told him, you don't need to cash this until like Friday. Well, he went and cashed it anyway, and it overdrew my account. So I couldn't get gas. So I didn't know what to do. I called Emily, who was on her way to the hotel, and she actually lent me $20 so I could put gas in my car to get home. So I went to the Fairfield Inn on, it was on I don't know if it was Fairfield Inn. It was a hotel, I think it was on Windward Parkway, I think. But I went to her hotel, and she lent me $20. I went up to her room and saw Olivia, and I went home.
Home to your condo in Buckhead.
Correct.
Okay. Later that night, did you get a phone call?
I did.
From who?
I think it was Detective Hayes. I think. I'm 90% positive it was Detective Hayes.
If I told you it was Detective Kuykendall, would that be surprising?
Wouldn't be surprising at all.
And what was that phone call? What was the purpose of that phone call?
They asked me where I was, they asked me some questions about my locations on July 3rd and July 4th. And I said, well, I told them. And they asked me, is there anybody who would want to hurt your father? And I said, no, I don't think so. And then they asked me, well, let me back up. They told me that they found a bullet in my father's rib, and now this was being treated as a homicide. And there were some follow-up questions, and they asked me, would anybody ever benefit from your father being killed? And I was very frank. I said, well, yeah. I mean, my mom and whoever he's related to as far as financially. I mean, at this point in time, my brain had kind of already switched to thinking something had happened to him that wasn't falling in a fire.
Why did it switch?
Because of my mother's behavior when the police were there and just how she was acting.
What was that behavior? How was she acting?
Just not like somebody whose husband had just been found in a burn pile. When I left, when I was walking in my truck with the detective, my mother walked up and she asked him, she said, "Are y'all about done here?" And he said, "Well, ma'am, we're not, no. He said, "Well, my granddaughter needs to stay here tonight." And he said, "Well, ma'am, we're not really done." And I said, "Mama, Emily's got a hotel room. She's going to be fine." This is before I left to go back to Buckhead. "She's going to be fine." And she said, "My daughter will stay here if I say so," or something like that. And I was like, I was shocked. And I was angry. I'm getting yelled at. My father's just been found dead. I'm getting yelled at by her. I remember I had my tailgate down. I remember slamming my tailgate. The guy moved the car and I left. I was
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know that I would entirely blame anger on Melody. Like, anger is one of the many aspects of grief. And there's no timeline of when you hit some of these aspects. And maybe she wasn't really upset about the fact that they weren't allowing her daughter to stay so much as she was angry at the fact that Gary had left her, basically. He, you know, dipped out by dying first. Like, and I know it wasn't Gary's choice. Don't take it that way. Um, but people don't think rationally when they are grieving. Um, and, you know, there is, again, no actual timeline of when you hit these emotions. So Melody's anger might have been directed toward her son and towards the officers, and she may have used the excuse of the fact that her daughter couldn't be there, just because to her it was one more thing that wasn't going quite the way that she would have hoped for the day. I don't think anybody sets out the day after the 4th of July to, you know, have to deal with a murder investigation. I can see where it would be stressful. I can see where you would be emotional after something like that. I can also see where you would want to keep your loved ones close to you for that time period, for the comfort, for all of that. Where you wouldn't want to be alone in the house for the day all by yourself, you know? So, I mean, I can understand some of the stressors that Melody may have had to deal with at the time. Um, and I also understand where Chris is taking this more personally and why he would take this more personally. I also understand why he could potentially see this as, you know, his mom exhibiting odd behavior. If you're not very familiar with all of the stages of grief and some of the things that can happen throughout those stages of grief, um, so yeah, I know somebody who is still in the anger stage, with grief. I know several people who are still in that stage. I know some people who have gone straight to acceptance within days of, their loved one passing. Um, it doesn't mean that they don't miss that person, and it doesn't mean that they don't love that person, and it doesn't mean that they don't, that they're not still upset that that person's gone, or that they don't have days where it really hits them that, they can't go and talk to that person that isn't here anymore. It just means that they went through the grief process faster than somebody else. It doesn't really reflect on their personality at all.
I was beyond words, angry and frustrated, and just, I was all over the place mentally. Um, and it just didn't seem, something was off. And so that, yeah, that,
So when you heard about the bullet in his rib, what was going on in your head?
I just remember crying. Like after I got off the phone with them, I just sat on the couch and me and Jenna just cried together. I just all I remember.
Did your mom say anything about money to you that night?
She had asked me, she had told me that I needed to cancel the condo to the beach.
The night on the 5th?
Yes. Well, either the afternoon, it was still daylight. I don't remember exactly when it was, but she told me you need to cancel that condo to the beach.
And what did you think about that?
I thought, that's what you're worried about right now? And I told her, I was like, well, I didn't book the condo to the beach. I ended up a few days later canceling it because I was able to find out. I think my father had emailed me the confirmation, and I was able to get the information. But at the time, that was the least, in my mind, it's like, why are we even talking about this? Which was, another reason that I would.
All right, now this could just be because I'm a cheap ass. My husband will even tell you I am a cheap ass, but um, I don't care how my husband passed away. One of the first things that I would worry about is no longer paying for the things that I would not be able to afford without my husband's income. Um, because I would immediately go into problem solving crisis mode. Now, again, I have tons of mental health issues. I have anxiety. I have obsessive compulsive disorder. My husband will tell you if there is a crisis, I am usually the first person to have 75 different plans on what we need to do. Um, us having 3 kids, I am constantly having to deal with some sort of crisis from a child hurting themselves, hurting each other on accident. You know, there was one day where my son was jumping on his bed and he wasn't supposed to be. And I was taking the dog out and he fell. Um, and we had to take him to the emergency room. And I immediately went from dog outside mode to, you know, mom mode, where I hurried up and I grabbed a rag and I had him put it in his mouth to kind of keep from some of the bleeding. And, I carried him to the car. I grabbed his sister. I called my husband before I even pulled out and I let him know what was going on. I was able to send my ex a message over our co parenting app to let him know what the hell was going on and where we were going. I was even able to have my husband meet us at the children's hospital to swap me cars because my car was acting up on the way there. Like, I had handled so much, and we hadn't even gone to the emergency room yet. Um, and so, yeah, like, I am that type of person that automatically goes into problem solving mode whenever there is a crisis. It's how I cope with things. So who's to say that Melody is not the same way? Who's to say that to keep her mind occupied and to keep her mind from spiraling into a mental breakdown, that this wasn't how she handled it?
I, I, I was starting to think something was wrong.
So you get a phone call from Detective Kuykendall the night he tells you about the bullet, and he asked you if your dad had any enemies, things of that nature. Do you know anybody that not really would benefit from it, but that would want him dead?
No.
Would Scott have benefited from his death?
I mean, could have. I mean, financially, all of his kids could have.
How so?
Because we're his children.
What does that mean?
That means if if somebody has money and they pass away, it, can go to their wife, their kids, whoever.
Did you end up speaking with law enforcement in the days shortly after?
Not shortly after, no.
Okay. And why was that?
The following day, which would have been the 6th, my mother was still being questioned. My brother and my mother were still being questioned. I guess they had taken them to a local precinct, maybe. At this time, when we're in frantic chaos mode, and I guess my sister Amanda had contacted somebody at Borough Foreman, and then I was told that I need to be at this lawyer's office because my mother was, I guess, still talking with them. They were trying to get her out of being interviewed with the police, and we ended up at an attorney's office.
On the 6th?
On the 6th.
So, that Friday, July 6th?
Correct.
Okay. And why did that keep you from talking to law enforcement?
Well, because they told us not to. Manny Aurora was the name of the lawyer, the attorney, he told us, he said, if you say anything to the police, they're going to arrest you, your mother, and your brother if you say anything to them.
He said that to you?
He said that to me. He said that to everyone.
Who was everyone? Who was there?
Everybody. All the siblings were there. Jenna was not there. My kids were not there. But like me, Scott, Amanda, Emily. I don't remember if Emily's husband was there. But it was definitely the four of us kids and my mother.
Okay. And so they instructed you not to talk to law enforcement.
Correct.
And what did you think of that?
I thought it was strange. I just wanted to find out what happened to my dad, you know? Like, I just wanted to know. And I remember getting kind of frustrated and probably voiced my opinion about it. It was an effort by Manny Aurora to convince us that if we said anything, he told us that the police were probably lying about him being shot. And he was just like, you need to shut up or you're going to go to prison for this. And I'm thinking, I had nothing to do with this. Why do I need to stop talking? Mm-hmm. But I did. I agreed. I said, okay. I said, fine. I won't.
Now what about Addison? Since she was there the night of the 4th, mm-hmm. Was she interviewed?
By the police?
Right.
Or
by the police. We'll start with the police. Was she interviewed by the police?
No, I think Jenna had. I can't remember if Jenna. I don't think Jenna had gotten there before it. It's just so cloudy to me, like when people got there. But no, they did not talk to Addison that day.
Was she eventually forensically interviewed?
Yes.
Okay.
They took her cell phone.
Law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay. And that was a big deal?
That was a very big deal. She was very upset about it.
Mm-hmm. So she was eventually forensically interviewed, and you know that to mean what?
When, I mean, they flew down. This was over a year later. Mm-hmm. This was August of 2019, and Kendall Lee, their mother, my ex-wife, flew down with them, and we went to I think it was Anna or Ann Crawford Children's Center. My children went in the back and were interviewed, and we were not in there, myself or their mother. Mm-hmm. And then they came out, and that was it.
Okay. As far as you know, no law enforcement interviewed them?
No. The only thing I seem to remember was maybe law enforcement was listening to it. But there was no law enforcement there physically.
Okay. Did you talk to Manny Aurora about Addison being interviewed or spoken with?
Yeah.
What
he
was
confronted me about it, and he wanted me to call my daughter. This was not at the first meeting. This was we had multiple meetings with Manny Aurora. And he wanted me to call my daughter and put her on speakerphone for him and like everybody in that room to basically like confront my daughter.
Your Honor, I'm going to go ahead and object to relevance. I allowed kind of a brief reenactment of what happened earlier, but now we're continuing to talk about what a previous attorney in this case was saying, so I would go ahead and object to relevance, Judge.
It explains why he didn't go to law enforcement and eventually.
He can explain what he did next without going into the content, so I'll sustain the objection.
Did you eventually go to law enforcement yourself?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Because I'd had it. I was done with. I didn't like the way that was going with her attorneys. And I was just wanted to know what happened, and I just felt compelled to help find out.
Did anyone go with you?
My brother, Scott.
Do you remember about how long after your father's remains were found did you go voluntarily with your brother to talk to law enforcement?
I don't remember the day. I don't remember the date.
Was it more than 10 days after?
I don't remember.
If
'Cause
I had told you it was July 26th, would that sound accurate to you?
It could. What I'm trying to think, because I went to Maine, and that meeting was either right before or right after it. So if it was July 26th, it would have been, I believe, right after I got back from Maine.
Okay. You went to Maine to see your daughters?
Yeah, I had to get out of this town.
So you sat down with what law enforcement officers did you sit down with when you and Scott spoke with them?
For sure, Detective Hayes, and a couple other ones. I think Kuykendall might have been there, but I can't be sure. There were people coming in and out. It was a lengthy interview. Mm-hmm. It was officers coming in and out.
I want to talk about the year that followed your father's murder. So the next year, before your mother's arrest, you eventually at some point became the temporary administrator of his estate. Can
Correct.
you tell the jury about that?
Yeah. I mean, the farm was basically, there were financial problems. I mean, the farm was potentially going into foreclosure. I mean, there were things going on. My mother was openly trying to say we need to get the death certificate and like all these things. And Emily and Scott and I decided we needed to do something as far as, because they froze all my father's accounts. There was nobody who could use any of that money, and somebody had to do it. There were discussions back and forth whether Amanda was going to do it, and there was at this time a very hard divide in our family. And
What was that divide?
well,
Who was divided?
my brother Scott, my sister Emily, and I on one side, and my mother and Amanda on the other. My mother was not living, but still had kind of a relationship with Amanda.
What created the divide?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, it was my mother was very much so telling us that we needed to help support her, that we needed to give her money because my father had supported us and given us money all these years, and that we needed to then in turn give her money. To speak of my situation, and I just had my suspicions that she had something to do with this.
So there was a divide in the family. You eventually became the temporary executor of the estate, administrator. And so when you were in this role, did you learn who the beneficiary was of all your dad's assets?
Yeah. Barry, I was actually visiting my kids in Maine, and Barry Bishop sent me an email saying that my mother was on the life insurance and the 401k.
Eventually, did someone else get appointed the administrator of the estate?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Was that a contentious area among the family when you were appointed?
Yes.
How so?
My mother was not happy about it.
How did you know that?
Well, the day that I was officially appointed, and she had learned about it, her and my brother got into a pretty bad, I guess, argument or something like that.
You weren't there.
I wasn't there.
Did you and her ever speak?
Yeah.
How did you speak with her?
I called her. It wasn't too long after that because I was getting, not directly from my mother, but through Amanda, basically saying, you need to do this with, because they thought I had access to these accounts and I didn't. What happened was when I was named, because there were bills, there was the mortgage, there was a condo in Tuscaloosa, Alabama that my dad owned, that I wanted to start making these current. I didn't want those things to be foreclosed on or go away. And so when I was named temporary administrator, I immediately set up a meeting with his personal banker. And she said, okay, come down here. We're going to have a meeting. I get to the meeting. She meets me in the parking lot. She's like, Chris, our legal team said a temporary administrator is not enough for me to give you access to your father's funds to pay for anything. From what I remember, that was either not believed or just maybe they didn't know that. And I called my mother to tell her that I can't.
Now, note that he does talk about how he wanted to make the payments on those properties and things that his father owned current so that they wouldn't be foreclosed on. And so that stuff would not go away. Which goes to show the financial situation of their parents. Just because there's money in the 401k and the life insurance does not mean that there's enough money to even pay those debts, let alone have anything to live off of. And considering he had canceled the life insurance policy prior to that, was there even a life insurance policy to draw from?
Do anything. I don't have a checkbook. I don't have a card. I don't have access to money. I can't. I have nothing to be able to pay these bills.
When you became the administrator of the estate, what was your role? What was your duty, your job, your oath?
My duty was to preserve the estate.
So be conservative with, try to save as much as you could.
Yeah.
Is that what that means? So let's go back to the phone call with your mom you had mentioned. What was that?
I called her and I said, I can't. I said, Mama, I can't do anything. I can't. And I did. I said, just please tell me what happened. I was like, there's no way you know. Or excuse me, there's no way you don't know. If all this happened like they say, there's no way you don't know about it. And then she hung up with me, and I think that's the last time I've talked to my mother ever. I mean, that's the last conversation that I've had with my mother, period.
Did you ever confront your mom about any of her affairs?
I'm sure I did. After this all happened, there were at that point text group threads for the family. I would get very angry about some of the things that were being said, and I would throw it out there like, well, you know, are having this affair, you know, XOXO, which was some name for Rusty's name on her cell phone, and I would like text it to like just.
Did you ever confront her face to face?
I don't remember that.
After everything that happened, you had already mentioned your PTSD therapy. When did you start doing that?
Well, I started doing that.
Judge, I would object to relevance as to PTSD therapy.
I'm sorry?
Response.
Oh, it goes towards the aftermath of all of this and the family, how it's affected the family.
It has nothing to do with the facts in this case.
Also saying
Did you ever get to have a funeral for your father?
No,
Was that a contentious area after his death?
for me it was.
why don't we have witness step out too?
Chris, can you step out?
Yes.
All right, I asked the lawyers for a sidebar and quickly got beyond what we needed to talk about at a sidebar based upon the ground rules that I had set for that previously. So let's start that whole conversation over. So we had a question to the witness about the family being contentious after, based upon an issue at the funeral. I think Mr. Weaver was about to object, but before the witness could say anything, I stopped him. So we'll go from there.
And that's correct, Judge. It sounded as if he was getting into some of the issues that were the natural part of the delay of this case. We had expert witness issues insofar as examining the remains, and to somehow say or imply that that needed to be stopped before that got started. Also, I think it sounds like the state's going to try to also discuss something about the contentiousness of the funeral, insofar as my client wouldn't pay for the funeral, but they've already stated that she doesn't have any money to pay for anything anyway. She had no access to funds, so ultimately it's not relevant.
All right, Ms. Frankish.
Judge, the motive of this case for this defendant is money. The fight and the argument that I'm wanting to get through the witness is that shortly after his death, this is well before Ms. Farris's arrest, well before the defendant's arrest, before the remains and the release of the remains even became an issue. The family met at a funeral home to plan a funeral. The package that Emily had picked out, the defendant did not want to spend that much money on. There is a call that we are going to play later on, a recorded call with Rusty Barton, where she talks about, why do you need a funeral? There's nothing left, basically. So it loops back to the motive.
Right.
And
Here's the problem. When you ask him about him being upset about not being able to have a funeral, he's not going to just want to talk about what you're wanting to talk to him about. He's going to want to talk to them about the fact that, as far as I know, they've never had a funeral because the remains were at the crime lab forever, and then COVID, and so longer, and then expert witnesses need to work on the remains, and then we had an expert witness die, and then we had another expert witness, and all the other issues that have come up over the course of the trial that have led to the delay. Now, if y'all want to craft some kind of explanation for all that we can give the jury, I'm happy to do that. But he's going to go into all that other stuff, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do to stop him from doing it. Now, you can instruct him, and when he goes outside the specific instance at the funeral home that you want to talk to him about, I'm going to call him down in front of the jury, and I don't want to have to do that. So if y'all can contain your witness to just that conversation and those issues, that'll be fine. But I don't think that's going to happen.
okay, Judge.
All right.
Judge, can we just have 1 second?
All right, everyone. I have to take the dog out and get ready to leave to go get the munchkins. So I am going to use this time to get off. When we come back tomorrow, we will finish out the remainder of day 3. There's really not that much. If I had the time, I would definitely stay on because I want you guys to see the argument about this juror. It really is hilarious. But when I come on tomorrow, I will officially call it day 4 because all we're going to do is watch the last 15 minutes of day 3, and then we will spend the entire rest of the time finally on day 4. And I will update the description of the live as soon as I get home with day 3's link. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your Thanksgiving. And I can't wait to talk to you all. Oh, not tomorrow, Saturday. I will be on Saturday. Tomorrow is my Thanksgiving. I apologize. I will be on Saturday. So when I come back on Saturday, we will officially be on day 4. All right. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I will see everybody on Saturday.